to come here today to talk to you about this topic because it's something very personal to me, and I really appreciate that the organizers would put together this kind of event where people can come together in a safe space and discuss and engage different ideas with each other, even if they come from different perspectives. So first I want to start out by saying that my objective today is not to come to you as, I'm not coming here to convert you all to feminists. My point is I don't want to be this white, liberal feminist that comes from the West, that comes from America to teach you all how to be a good feminist or what is feminism. That's not my objective here today. Mostly I just want to share with you about my own experiences, my own personal journey to slowly come to feminist point of view and start to identify myself as a feminist. So I wanted to start off by saying that, and I want to ask to show by your hands how many of you in this room would say, yes, I'm a feminist. So if I asked you, are you a feminist, would you say yes?
Depends on how you define it.
Кто считает себя феминистками? Неважно, каким считаете, таким считаете.
Just like in general, if someone said, are you a feminist? So, okay. And the reason why I ask this is because it's always so interesting for me to see what kind of response you get. Like sometimes I ask people, oh, are you a feminist? And they look at me like no, like I ask them if they committed a crime or a murder or something like very terrible. And you know, and the other times I ask them, are you a feminist? And they say, oh, I'm not a feminist, but I believe in equal rights, social, political, and economic for women.
Which is feminism.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I say, okay, does this person realize they just told me what a feminist is? And so, and I think that mostly this comes from, you know, this somehow a stigma has become attached to this word. It's like a dirty word, like, oh, the F word, feminism, like, ooh, you know, people associate it with some like bra-burning, man-hating, lesbian, some crazy twisted idea of some radical extremist, and I don't think that's fair to say. I don't think that it represents maybe the entire movement and history of feminism, and you know, it's not, it's a global issue. I mean, even in the UK, there was a study a few years ago, and in the poll, people said only 19% of people said, yes, I'm a feminist, but 81% of people said, yes, I believe in you know, the equal rights for men and women. So it's something that I've noticed everywhere that I've traveled, everywhere that I visited. And so I think that, you know, feminism, it's so broad. You have some more extreme views, and they range all the way to something more moderate. And so I think even if you look at the history of feminism, so I'll talk to you just really in brief about, you know, the start in the 19th and the 20th century when women came to fight for their political rights, just the right to vote, the right to education, right to own property, the right to divorce. I mean, I think of these as very basic human rights. And can you imagine just 100 years ago, it's not so long ago that maybe your grandmother couldn't go to school or she didn't have those basic rights. So in short, that, you know, that's kind of a little bit about the first wave in the United States. Then you had it followed by the second wave of feminism in the 1960s, which was you know, more about like social or cultural rights, the rights, reproductive rights for women, issues regarding the family, and also sexuality. And so, you know, in 1961, it was the first time where an oral contraceptive pill was available. So women had these new choices to make. Like, do they want to delay childbirth? They didn't have unexpected pregnancy. They could stay in the workplace longer. And so this was, you know, creating some kind of different dynamic between men and women. In the 1980s in the US, for the first time, it was against the law. Marital rape was outlawed. And so you have all of these different laws and legal structures being enforced and put into place. And then the third wave of feminism in the 1990s was kind of like a response back to the second wave. So it worked to incorporate more voices, more diverse, so like women of color, the LGBT community, queer feminists. You know, it was critiqued that the second wave only represented white women that were middle class, and that's just not right. There are so many different kinds of feminism out there. So, so within all of these different waves of feminism, you also have radical feminists, Islamic feminists, black feminists, post-colonial feminists. You might ask yourself, okay, like, where do I fit into all of this? I mean, it can be a little bit confusing. And I just want to share with you about my own personal journey. So I remember the first time I heard the word feminism, I really didn't know what it was. Like, I had just gone to university, I was 18 years old, and I remember meeting a boy on campus, and he was so international, he spoke different languages, and I remember, you know, wanting to really impress him. And there was an instance where he was telling me about his course, Women's Studies, and he was talking about feminists, and he was saying like, oh, those feminists, like, they're crazy, like, kind of putting them down in a really negative way. And I remember, like, even though I didn't even know what feminism really meant, I just kind of agreed with him. I was like, yeah, haha, those feminists, without knowing anything. And I look back at this moment and I think, gosh, like, what was I doing? Like, I was just trying to, you know, raise my own status, you know, to impress a guy, and for what? It was just like feeding right back into this patriarchy. And so, you know, that was my first year at university, and it wasn't even until a couple years later when I studied in India that I was really confronted with what it means to be a feminist, and I started to think about it more deeply. So, and I was confronted with sexism in a very real way. Like, in my time in India, I wore like full Indian local clothes, the dupatta, like sunglasses, like all of my body was covered. But I realized that even just my presence in a public space on the street, it was like an open invitation for men to look at me, to watch me everywhere I go, to catcall me, Eve tease me. And I mean, I'm sure as a foreigner, my experience there is a little bit different, but at the same time, you know, even at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, I would look around and I would see, oh, like, there are no women on the street, like, I'm the only one. And it was the first time it was really obvious to me that in this space, you know, the public is for men and a private space is at home. Like, that's where women should stay. They should be in private, not in public. And you know, this really had a strong impact on me, and even one of my close friends there, she was walking home from school one day. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and a man came up to her on a motorcycle and sexually assaulted her right on the street. And so this really had a strong impact on me. And it was actually, when I finished my coursework in India, I came to Kyrgyzstan, and I was very much still in my India mindset. And I remember arriving at the airport, and I saw a girl there. It was summertime, and she was wearing a tank top and a skirt. It wasn't, you know, so much skin, but I was just thinking, wow, like, how scandalous. How can she wear these clothes? Because I really started to think like in an Indian way. So anyways, after I lived in Kyrgyzstan for a while, I started to slowly come to know just a little bit about Kyrgyz culture, and I really met so many strong, really inspiring women, and this also, you know, influenced my way of thinking. You know, I saw so many women who really took pride in the way that they took care of their appearance. At the same time, they were so strong. They were like business leaders, leaders in parliament and in the community, and I was so impressed by this. And it wasn't till later, when I got back to the United States, I was able to like think more about both of these experiences and kind of take it in. I started to look more, I mean, I recognized myself to be a feminist, but I started to explore more and more different kinds of feminism. And so I want to share with you today just a little bit about lipstick feminism, because the reason I chose this particular kind of feminism is because I think it's totally opposite from the stereotype of maybe what you think a feminist could be. So it's, lipstick feminism is basically, where you use your sexuality, or in like feminine traditions, it could be cosmetic makeup, like fashion, high heels, like everything that is feminine and feminine beauty. You use this as a tool of empowerment. And this can be a little bit controversial, so there can be a lot of critiques. It's a very fine line. How do you know if you're being sexually empowered versus sexually objectified? And I just want to also point out, I'm not here to promote this as the type of feminist that you should be. I wanted to share with you because I think it's something quite different. And so just to give an example of the difference between being sexually empowered versus sexually objectified is, so when you're objectified, you do not have the power in the situation. So for example, I'm walking down the street and someone is looking at me, teasing me, like that person is the one who is in power. So then you may ask, okay, how do you become sexually empowered? How do you take this power back? And power comes really with consent. First of all, you choose to dress this way. You make this choice and you actively and are very consciously aware of it. It's not like you just woke up and got very dressed up. I mean, even today, before I came here this morning, I thought very carefully about what I would wear. Of course, I put on my lipstick for the lipstick feminism talk, but to be empowered, it takes more than just consent. You should also, you also are almost in an elevated position of power. Maybe you are well educated, you have money, but if someone just comes and wakes up and they put on say they're going to the nightclub, like Bar 12 or wherever they go in Kyrgyzstan, and they put on this tight little dress and they put on all of their makeup and their high heels, and who is it for? Is it for you? Did you choose this and you wanted to feel confident and sexy about yourself? Or do you have social pressure from your family to find a husband, or you really want a boyfriend and you're lonely and you want to, find someone to take home? I mean, you have to think very carefully about the choices that you make and be conscious and aware of them. And I think for me, that's the difference between being objectified and being empowered. And there are also some other critiques of this lipstick feminism. You can take it a step further. So just for the point of discussion, well, what about prostitution? What about dancers who are in the strip club? Are they doing it, are they empowered, or are they being objectified? And so I think you also have to look at each situation carefully. Is this woman, is she desperate for money? Does she need to pay for her 2 children? Does she have medical bills? Then I don't necessarily think that would be empowerment, because when you're in a low situation and you're trying to find some way to make money, there's not much choice in that. You're kind of left in this situation to be vulnerable. Or on the other side, if you look at a woman who is a dancer in a burlesque club and she makes $20,000 in 10 minutes, then you can say, I don't know. I think maybe that's more empowerment than objectification. So I wanted to bring this up to you, this kind of lipstick feminism, and maybe a classic example, just so you can get a better idea, you could say it would be like Madonna, for example. Think of her material girl, and I really think of her as this classic example of a lipstick feminist. And I share this with you, and I hope that by learning about lipstick feminism, it maybe, if you already know about feminism or you want to learn more, it sparks your interest and you look to see that it's not just one stereotype, it's a broader movement, and that it will cause you to explore and learn more about this topic. because there's so much history to the feminist movement, and to just write it off and say that, you know, you're not a feminist, or you disagree with them, or you don't like them, or whatever. I don't think it's fair, because so much history has taken place. People have come so far, and there's still so much work to be done. Okay, 1 in 3 women are victims of sexual violence, and it's usually by their own intimate partner. Okay, we have 22% of women represented in parliament worldwide. You know, women make 10 to 30% less than men. Come on, that's not very fair. I think we deserve equal pay. And I just want to leave you with one last quote by an author, Bell Hooks. And she's one of my favorite feminists, and this book is available online for free. I can share it with the organizers, and if you're interested, you can read this book online. And so if you have any questions afterwards, or you want to maybe secretly admit to me that you're a feminist, or talk about any of these questions, I'll be happy to talk to you. Okay, so here's the quote. Okay. Visionary feminism is a wise and loving politics. It is rooted in the love of male and female being, refusing to privilege one over the other. The soul of feminist politics is the commitment to ending patriarchal domination of women and men, girls and boys. Love cannot exist in any relationship that is based on domination and coercion. A genuine feminist politics always brings us from bondage to freedom, from lovelessness to loving. Thank you.